Afternoon, folks. I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School. And what I'd like to do today is introduce you to our basic knife kit and assembly instructions and the things that you will receive in the knife kit along with a DVD. And then we'll go through the steps and processes to set this knife up and build this knife using some pretty inexpensive tools. We're not going to use the real expensive high-dollar grinders, things like that. I found some lesser expensive things that will do a fine job of making this knife that we're going to introduce to you in this DVD as well. Stay with me and we'll get started. Okay, so when you receive your knife kit from Self-Reliance Outfitters, you're going to have a few pieces and parts. You'll have a DVD that will walk you through the explanation process of how to build this knife that we're going to do right now. You're also going to have a piece of wood that's actually a jig for putting your blade grind on the knife. And it's just made out of a piece of pressure treated 2x material. It's not meant to last a long time. It's meant to use for one or two knives, and then you toss it and make another one. But we wanted to include this in the kit so that you could get a good solid grind on your blade. You're going to get a wing nut and a 1/4 inch carriage bolt that goes inside the fixture, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. You should have a pin. You should have a ferrule tube. You should have a pair of scales that are made from walnut with 2 holes drilled in them, one for the lanyard ferrule and then one for the pin. And you should have a 1095 knife blank. So the first thing we need to talk about is how we're going to prepare this blank to make sure everything else comes out right. And just make sure that it's laying flat. Look at it for space underneath and make sure that thing's laying good and flat and it's not humped up. If it looks like it's humped up any on you at all, now's the time to straighten it out. Now we're ready to grind. We don't need to put a lot of pressure on this. Very slow and easy. Just like that. We don't want to heat the blade up. Okay, so now we need to set our knife up on our grinding jig. And this grinding jig has 2 holes in it and a shelf, and it has a 12-degree bevel on this side. And once you've done that, get a drill bit that is the same thickness as your material. And this is a 3/16 drill bit because we have 3/16 material. Take your blade and lay it down flat and scribe with the front of your drill bit down the center of your blade. Just like this. Go ahead and push this all the way in. Don't worry about where your belt's at. Worry about where your platen is, because that's going to be what you're going to be pushing up against while you're grinding. So you want this right angle to be correct. Again, you're not going to be able to crowd this grinder. You can see how it's removing material. Don't worry about it being a little bit uneven. Right now, it'll even up. Okay, so you can see our center line running up our blade, and we've got an even amount of material on both sides of that line. We need a couple more passes on the side we're grinding now, right in here. Now once our blade is at critical temperature, and we find that out by pulling it out of the oven and touching it against a magnet. And I generally keep a magnet of some kind right beside my forge so that I can pull it out, touch it on the magnet, and pull the blade along the magnet to make sure that it's non-magnetic. Dunk it and agitate. Our knife has been drying now for about, 14, 15 hours overnight. Now we're going to remove all of our clamps. Take a belt off that you just wore completely down and go back to one of the belts that you used on a blade that didn't have enough grit on it to sharpen metal, but now it'll be fine for wood. That'll recycle those belts for you a little bit at a time and give you more life out of them. Now if you got a space where you got some glue in there from the glue up process, you can come in there with a nail and just scrape that glue out of there just like that. And that'll get rid of it, and then you can sand down to that. All right, so we've got our buffer wheel dressed with white compound. And remember that these buffers move at pretty high RPMs. This one's moving at 3,450 RPM, so that's quick. The rotation of the buffer, it shows you right on it, is going this way. And the buffing process will heat your blade, so you have to be cognizant of that as well. Linseed oil will give you a really good finish on a handle, and it will last for a long, long time. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get a coat on here, let it dry, get another coat on here, and you're going to want to repeat this several times over the course of the next year, doing it once a day for about a week, then do it once a week for about a month, once a month for a year, and then once a year thereafter. That's the old country adage for using boiled linseed oil to seal things like axe handles and tool handles. There's where we sit. You can clean this up a little bit more if you want to, or just oil it, but by leaving that forging on the blade, you've protected that area somewhat from rust. And now you're just going to have to worry about oiling the blade itself to protect that from rust. And you can do that with lots and lots of oils, to include piston wax.